Hi and welcome to part 2 of our Blender tracking series. In this episode we're going to be looking at 2-point tracking, and to do that let's go into our motion tracking workspace and open up a clip on Dropbox, and I'm going to take this one. Okay, now that's loaded up you can see that we just have a basic handheld clip, me walking down the street, and you'll see that in order to put in the layers that we want, we're going to have to correct both the X and Y movement, the up and down movement, in the same way that we did in the last episode with the single point track, but also we need to correct for this rotation rubbish that's going on. And to do that we need to use 2 track points in our scene and use the information of their relative positions in order to stabilize our rotation, or not necessarily stabilize, that's a different video, but to transfer the movement of the main clip onto our static images. What I'm going to show you is just a simple sky replacement. We're not going to go into full detail as it's not a sky replacement tutorial. I just want to show you the tracking tools and how to set that up. But first let's set scene frames and find a section of the clip that it works, and I'm going to go to a little bit further in. There's a section, we start zooming in here, okay, so about 430, we'll press S to start there, and then frame about frame 560, press E and just end the clip there. So we've got approximately 120 frames. Just let that load through, and you can see we have got a lot of up and down movement here, and some rotation that's going to be really quite annoying if we had to try and match our background images to this actual clip. So what we need to do is find 2 points in this clip that stay on screen all the time. Okay, so we have the same issue with 2-point tracking that we did with 1-point tracking, in that the area we are tracking needs to be along the correct plane, because if I track something forward like this sign here and something on one of these cars here, the perspective shift would cause a lot of problems and the tracking points would be moving in the wrong aspect, and it would lead to errors in our final result. So we need something along the same plane, so something along this wall which is facing us. This car here, we could use something, or maybe along this line of cars. These seem to be quite the same sort of plane. I'm going to pick these 2 signposts here because they are kind of in the mid background, and a slight warning, you have to understand your perspective, because if I use this building at the back it may not appear like it, but it is actually on an angle, so this corner is further away from the camera than this corner, and that would give you those perspective errors that we just talked about. So let's zoom in, and like I said, I'm going to choose these 2 signposts. I'm just going to pick a corner. So let's have a look at our tracking settings, and as we need the rotation, we'll choose the location and rotation from the motion model, or I can come to the tracking presets and just choose fast motion, which will give us the location and rotation motion model in, as default. Right, so let's add our tracks. If I hold down Control, I can click on the spot. I could just use the add marker and put them in, but this is quicker. So now I have that, and I'm going to drag that one just so it's on the corner of that sign. Now I'm going to select that one, and that landed fairly accurately. And now I need to select both markers by pressing A twice so that both are active, and then we can come down and just track those two markers. Let that run through for a second, and we are at the end of the scene, so nothing happened. So if I track backwards instead, you can see now we start tracking, and our tracking points are holding onto the corners of those images quite nicely. You can see there they're staying exactly where we want them to. So we'll let that run for a couple of seconds, and that is literally it for the tracking. As long as those two markers don't slide off and go anywhere, then we're going to be golden. A couple more seconds. Yeah, we have actually done it, and that's nice. We seem to have slipped down a tiny little amount there, but we're not even going to worry about that. We have got enough data for us to do the job properly. Now, in order to match the rotations of this, we're going to need something that connects these two markers together, and we will do that after we've added the empties. So click on reconstruction, link empty to track. Now you can see in our 3D view up here that we have two empties connected to our camera. So let's go to our default view and have a look at those. Let's get rid of the cube, goodbye cube, and let's set up our camera so it's in an appropriate position by pressing Alt G and Alt R. That clears out the rotation and location. I'm going to pull the camera up so I am facing straight down, and now you can see my two markers are on the front there. Let's pull my resolution up to full, and I want, what do I want? I want to see my video in the background, so let's open background images from the side panel. I'm going to choose movie clip, deselect camera clip, and insert my movie. Okay, so now if I press play, you can see the empties. Let's just shift select those, and we can scale them down a little bit so that we can see them. Okay, so now we have our background. Let's import our new sky that we're going to replace this plain boring white one. And to do that, first we need an add-on, which is under user preferences, add-ons, and if I type in images, you can see that we have an add-on called import images as planes. Just check that and close out of the user preferences, and now if we go to file, import, we have this images as planes option. Just select that, and then we can bring in an image. I'm going to choose the skies, and I'm going to choose this one, but before I click import, I'm going to make sure in my user preferences that I have certain things set up. I'm going to change to shadeless. I don't need corner plane, I don't really need an alpha, but I'm going to include the use alpha button. I'm going to go from straight to pre-multiplied. It's a good habit to get into checking that automatically, simply because it's easy to overlook when you're bringing in alpha images. And we don't need image sequences, we don't need to reload because it's just going to be a static image, and it's a HDR image, but that's not going to matter. Now you see we have our plane, and if I switch to textured view, this is our sky. So if I press S and just scale that up to fill our scene. If I go now to background images and tell my video to be on the front, now we can see, raise that up a little bit, scale it up a bit more dramatic, that's nice. Now if I press Alt A, obviously the sky is going to just sit there and look boring and stupid, which is not very good for our video or whatever we're doing. So back at the start, and you can see at the start we are in the wrong position, so let's move that back down again so that the horizon line is behind the buildings. And now if I find my empties, I'm going to select them from there, and you can see they are a bit behind the image, so I'm going to just drop that down ever so slightly so that our empties are on top. There we go. Wow, it doesn't really matter, we can select them from the outliner. Okay, so now like I said, we need to connect these empties together and then have something to pass the information from the empties onto the plane, and we're going to use an armature to do that. So I'm going to select the first empty, which is the closest one to us, which is named track 001, so it's actually the second empty. That doesn't matter. I'm going to Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, add armature single bone. Now we have a bone connected to, well, it's not connected, it is in the same position as our empty, and if I press 1 to go into front view, come down a little bit. Now I need this head to be in the same position as this empty, so I'm going to rotate it on the Y axis, R, Y, negative 90, because we are to the left side of the axis, so this is the negative side. If I wanted it to go the other way, I would type 0. And you can see it's a bit too big, it doesn't quite connect into the empty, so I'm going to choose the other empty, Shift S, cursor to selected, and now in edit mode on the bone, choose the bone, tab into edit mode, and you can see our head is selected. So if I Shift S, selection to cursor, that will just pull the head of the bone up to this empty. Alright, let's go out of edit mode into object mode. Now I need to parent this bone to this empty, not the other way around, that's important. So I will choose the bone, then shift select the empty and Control P, and as long as we get set parent to object, we know we have got the right order. So now the bone itself is independent, and if I move the empty, it moves the bone. So if I look through the window, camera, Alt A, you can see now the bone is moving around with the empty. Perfect, but now we need to get it to follow the rotation of this empty. So we'll take the bone, we'll go into pose mode, and now up in our top panel we have these extra options. We'll go to the one with the chain link, add bone constraint, and we're going to track 2, and the track 2 option, we'll choose the target as the track, which is the name of this first empty, and now we should be in the same position as the empty, so wherever that empty moves, this bone will follow. So if I press Alt A, You can see that's doing its thing as we rotate around. The bone perfectly follows. Nice. Alt A again. Just go back to the first frame. Now this is the magic. If we go into objects mode, choose the plane with our image, shift select the empty. Yep, you can't actually see that the bone is selected because it is within the boundary of this image. But you can see the armature is selected in our outliner. So now we can press Ctrl P, set parent, and you can see the parenting has all these different options which are related to parenting to armatures. So if we set parent to bone, because we only have one bone, we don't need to do anything other. Now this image will follow the exact movements of this bone here. So if I go back to camera view, and if I kind of match the opacity between the two images, you should be able to see this following along now. Ctrl A, and there we go. It matches into our image quite nicely. Now all that's left to do is composite them together, which is going to take a bit more work, and this isn't a compositing tutorial, but basically let's go quickly. Let's render one frame of our animation so we've got something to work with. And you'll notice I'm using Blender Render, which is the internal rendering engine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that for images. It's actually faster than Cycles for working with image based things. So let's go to Compositor, make sure the compositing button is checked, use nodes. There's our render layer, click use backdrop. And now we can add in a input, movie clip, open up our clip, and Shift A, add color mix, drop that in, drop in the image, and now I'll just take that down a bit. You can see we have our sky image and we can't see the background image just yet, but we know it's there because of the way things work here. So now we need to cut the sky, and we can do that a little bit. We'll do it quickly just with a luminance key. So Shift A, add matte, luminance key. This is going to be absolutely horrible. You can use masks, it will be a lot easier with masks. We're going to use a luminance key to pull the white from the sky, so let's pull this high and low up. If we check the map, that's the image, that's the map, and it's doing an okay job. But the colours are in the wrong order. So if I go Shift A, add colour invert, now we can see our map is a bit dirty at the top. Let's pull that down a bit. Okay, that's good. So now if I plug the image straight into the image there, and if I pull this map from the invert node into the factor, it should cut out our background, and that's actually pretty good. We have a bit of fringing here, and now all that remains is to render it. It's not going to be perfect, definitely not 100% perfect, because there are changes in the light which will affect it, and we would need to do some tweaks. But as this isn't a real tracking video, a real replacement video, I just wanted the tracking information, which I hope you got. We will do a track mask and more information on the lumens keying in other videos, so look out for those. But for now, that's it. Let me render this out, and then I'll show you the final result and point out any of the issues that we may have had with it. Okay, now we've finished rendering, let's just take a look at the final result, see what happened. Okay, so there we go, that's not too bad. We have some obvious issues around the trees there, but that's a normal thing that we would try and correct with our masking and our keying. We could try a different type of key in future, but for now I think you can see that the actual video itself has turned out quite nice. You can see the sky is matching the movement of the rest of the clip, and that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so let's close that down. We'll do a quick recap and then close off this video. So first of all, we started off in the motion tracking window, and we tracked 2 points in our clip which were on the same plane. Then we went to the reconstruction and linked 2 empties to those tracks. Then in the default view, we imported an image using the import images planes add-on, and then we connected an armature which we parented to our first empty. We used a bone constraint to track to the first track, and we used that information then by parenting the image plane to the bone so that the image followed that movement. And then we went to our compositor, added a new movie clip layer, connected them together with a mix layer. We cut the sky out using a lumens key, which we then inverted and used as a factor to split the 2 clips. Out the registrations on these cars to keep their privacy. So that's all that mask is for. And then we rendered it out to an FFmpeg video with a MP4 into a H.264 container, and that was it. That is exactly as it is, and you would use the exact same technique if you wanted to add, for example, let's try and zoom in a bit better. I'm pressing Alt V to zoom in and V to zoom out. So if I wanted, for example, to add a poster to this wall, I would use exactly the same technique. I would track the 2 points, add an armature and parent the image that I had laid onto this point. I would parent that to the armature, and it would stick to the wall here. Exactly the same. And if I wanted to add a 3D object as well, well, these are 3D objects, these images, they are planes in the 3D viewport, so I could just as easily add a Suzanne or something if I wanted to put one somewhere close, though bearing in mind if I wanted to drop a Suzanne into this gap here, my option would probably be better to track something on this car, maybe this light here and one of these red lights here, and use that point for my tracking, and then that should allow me to drop the Suzanne in there, and it should sit quite nicely. But that's the trouble with that kind of thing. We do often get perspective shift, so it's better to do a 3D track, and we'll be doing a 3D track in a later video. But first I'm going to cover this scaling track, a 2D scaling, to give the impression of something moving forward, and we'll be covering that in the next video. So until then, hit that subscribe button, check out our website, and there will be a different use for this technique on the website, no doubt. That's generally what happens. So good luck and enjoy your compositing. I'll throw this video up on the website. There's actually nothing to give my Patreon supporters for this, so fortunately there aren't any, so it all works out in the end. So with that, I'll play the outro and see you next time.